You know them, you love them, and after we did a whole segment on them, you wanted more. So let's talk again about your questions about sinking funds. Welcome to NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast, where you send us your money questions and we answer them with the help of our genius nerds. I'm Sean Pyles. Later this episode, some follow-up questions to the episode we did on how to utilize savings buckets. But first, our weekly Money News Roundup, where we break down the latest in the world of finance to help you be smarter with your money. Today, our news colleague Anna Helhoski joins us to talk about data centers. They were once the kind of project every town was vying for, with the promise of tax revenue, jobs, and a foothold in the AI economic boom. But lately, towns are pulling back the welcome mats as local opposition to new facilities and their potential costs spreads. Anna's going to unpack why towns are pushing back against data centers. Anna, welcome back.
Thanks, Sean. It appears that people are not so excited about becoming neighbors with data centers, especially the very biggest data centers known as hyperscale facilities. In June, Heatmap released a poll that found 70% of Americans oppose a data center being built near their homes. Now, Heatmap did the same poll in October of last year, and that number was 42%.
Wow, okay, so that's a very big change in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah, it is. And I gotta say, after all the research I've done on data centers, I can't really blame them. That spike illustrates how quickly backlash is spreading. I'd like to add that the swing is nonpartisan, so this has become an issue for people all over the political spectrum.
So it's nice to find something that we can all agree on in this country. Let's start with the big
Absolutely.
picture. Why are so many Americans suddenly turning against data centers?
People are starting to get the sense that they'll be footing a bill that they never agreed to. And those costs are not only financial, but quality of life related as well.
Speaking of bills, electricity is often the first cost that people bring up. Why are data centers pushing utility rates higher?
Because these facilities require an enormous, constant supply of power. There's a meta facility under construction in Wyoming that's expected to eventually consume 10 gigawatts. And there's another one in Ohio funded by the Department of Energy that would consume the same. Now, for context, 1 gigawatt is enough to power roughly 1 million homes. So 10 gigawatts is the equivalent of 10 million homes. When that kind of demand gets added to an aging electrical grid, utilities have to upkeep and even expand infrastructure. And a lot of that cost is going to get passed to ratepayers. I'd like to add that when I say ratepayers, that may include people who live nowhere near the facility itself. One of my sources for a recent story I wrote on this topic lives in Baltimore, and he said that he's seen his electricity bill rise because of data centers 60 miles away in Northern Virginia, which is known as Data Center Alley. And that's simply because they're on the same regional grid.
So this is not just a local Virginia issue anymore.
No. Nationally, data centers accounted for under 6% of U.S. electricity use today. But last week, Bloomberg NEF published a projection that shows data centers could comprise 1/5 of the entire U.S. electricity consumption by 2035. So this cost pressure is going to spread well beyond the current hotspots.
Jeez. So who would actually end up paying for grid upgrades these facilities require?
In most cases, it's a shared cost, and that's exactly why it's so controversial. And Dominion Energy, the major utility that serves Northern Virginia, has announced plans to spend $8 billion expanding its infrastructure, and Virginia ratepayers are expected to cover more than half of that.
So electricity isn't the only utility that folks are concerned about. Water is another big one too, right?
Yeah, cooling all those servers takes a lot of water. A mid-sized data center can use as much water as a small town, and the largest facilities can consume around 5 million gallons a day, comparable to a city of 50,000 people. That water often gets pulled from the same aquifers and rivers that supply drinking water and are used for agriculture. Most new data centers are also being built in rural, sometimes drought-prone areas that already have water restrictions. Any pipeline expansion or water infrastructure that's needed to support the demand for data centers can also fall on taxpayers. I do want to stress, however, that the full impact of data centers on water supplies still isn't evident.
Data centers are now sucking up all our electricity. They're sucking up our water. I've heard they also make a horrible noise. What do they actually sound like?
In lieu of me actually trying to make the noise, basically it's a low frequency constant hum and it vibrates. And because it's spanning multiple frequency ranges, it's pretty difficult to measure with a standard decibel meter. And that's also why existing local noise ordinances might not be able to regulate the sound level that these data centers emit.
And are these resulting in any health effects? Has anything been reported there? Because it sounds like it can't be good for you.
Anecdotally, there have been some reports, but long-term health research specific to hyperscale data centers doesn't exist yet because these facilities are a very new phenomenon. People have reported sleep disruptions, headaches, and feeling that vibration from cooling fans, HVAC systems, and electrical equipment. These facilities also have backup diesel generators that cycle through regular testing, and those are going to make noise too. But more importantly, they emit diesel fumes into the air. So we know that there are health effects tied to air pollution, like respiratory issues and cardiovascular strain, and those carry their own long-term healthcare costs for residents too.
Okay, and this is a show about money, so let's talk about a bit of that. What are these data centers doing to people's property values?
It's genuinely a mixed picture. Now, there is a 2025 George Mason University study that found homes closer to existing data centers in Northern Virginia actually sold for more than those further away from the data centers. That also could be more coincidence than causation because those areas already had strong infrastructure and job access. The open question is what happens in rural communities or in other areas that get rezoned for a data center. This is my own opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, Sean. When you consider all of the financial costs and quality of life issues that we've talked about, it's certainly possible that homeowners may watch their property values drop in the future.
Based on everything you just laid out, that seems very possible. I mean, the noise alone would make me not want to live near a data center. One of the industry's counter arguments has always been that they'll bring in new jobs. Has that panned out at all?
That's another mixed picture, but the bottom line is that there are jobs, just less than advertised. Recently, the Brookings Institution looked at over 700 data centers and they found local employment does rise. It's about 4% to 5% over a 5 or 6 year period. That works out to about a few thousand jobs for your average county. Now, there are also construction jobs, and those are going to spike as you might expect, but that's just going to be temporary while they're actually being built. Strong and durable employment gains show up only in counties that have multiple hyperscale campuses that are clustered together. And most places aren't going to have that kind of concentration.
Just to lay it out, for a lot of these towns, the promised economic upside is smaller than their pitch suggested, while the cost exposure to things like the noise and electricity costs and water usage is ongoing and maybe greater than they anticipated.
Exactly. And there's one other kind of tricky element here. The companies and municipalities that negotiate deals to build data centers often operate under non-disclosure agreements. So residents may not even get the full visibility into the trade-offs that their towns are taking on. And that lack of transparency is just one of the reasons why the backlash has escalated so much in the last year.
Okay, and we've been talking about this big public outcry against data centers. What's the response to that been like?
We're seeing moratoriums pop up all over the place. Most recently in New York State, where I live, they put a 1-year moratorium on permitting or building data centers until the state has had time to examine potential effects and hopefully even create some regulations. But even within the state and in the rest of the country, most of the pushback is happening really at the local, individual town and county level.
What should someone do if a data center is proposed near where they live and maybe they're not a big fan of these things?
Get information and ask questions. Deals are going to get shaped during zoning hearings and public comment periods. And that's when people should ask, who's going to be actually shouldering the price of infrastructure upgrades? And what else do residents need to know that they may be covering down the road?
All right. Well, Anna, thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Of course.